Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. We got a good one for you today because the Patriots are playing the Dolphins, and the quarterback for the Patriots is Mac Jones. He went to Alabama. Quarterback for the Dolphins is Tua Tagovailoa. He went to Alabama. They have had different paths so far in the NFL. Tua struggled early. He had a coaching change. Now, people think that he might be an early front runner for MVP. Mac Jones had a great rookie year and a horrendous second year. People wonder just how basic he is. So, I'm bringing in Mike Sando from The Athletic. He does these quarterback tiers around the NFL. He talks to a million different GMs, coaches, and personnel evaluators. And they tell him, well, just how do these quarterbacks stack up? I want to know from Mike, how do Mac and Tua stack up? If you put Mac where Tua is and Tua where Mac is, same coaching, same weapons, would there be any difference at all? With no further ado, let's bring in Mike Sando. All right, before I bring in my good friend Mike Sando, I want to just go over this conversation, the Tua versus Mac and Mac versus Tua, because it's not going to go away. Both are first-round quarterbacks from Bama who won national championships there. Both have plenty to like about their games, and both get plenty of heat. Rex Ryan.
The impact of Bill O'Brien on Mac Jones, we saw it yesterday, right? We saw just how much better
Rex, you're going to say something nice about Mac Jones.
Look, Pea Shooter Jones looked good.
Come on, bro.
I've got to give him I'm going to give him a total credit because you're right. Like, oh my God, like that looked like a real offense, and he looked so much more confident. And that's what it's all about.
So that's Rex lacerating Mac. And of course, Tua has constantly had questions about his arm, deep ball, and of course, durability. Who's the better quarterback? Would Mac Jones be doing the same things that Tua is doing if he were in Miami with an offensive-minded head coach and an organization that spends on guys like Tyreek Hill rather than being here in New England where the Patriots' number one receiver is Devontae Parker, who the Dolphins had no use for? Would Tua be able to pluck some of these close games that Mac can't win if he were up here? Put those in the win column. There's a little nature versus nurture going on here with these two guys, I think. Tua got nothing early on from Brian Flores and his regime. Now he's got it as good as any quarterback in the NFL. Mac had it perfect his first year with McDaniels. Then he lived in a van down by the river with the coaching he got in his second year. Or didn't get, as the case was. I want to go a little bit inside the numbers, though. I got these from Pro Football Reference. There's a million places you can find analytics now, but I went and got these off of Pro Football Reference because it's a website that I rely on, and I encourage you to visit, donate, and do anything you can to help them. They're unbelievable. You can go in depth there, and here's some of the accuracy numbers on these two players. 2021. Let's start with Tua, actually. Tua, 67.8 completion percentage. That's terrific. Bad throws, he had 62 of them. 16.3 was his bad throw percentage. On target, 80.1% of the time. Then Mac, 67.6, just a smidge behind Tua in his rookie year for Mac. 90 bad throws, 17.7 percentage, a little higher, the bad throw percentage. On target, 76% of the time behind Tua. Then last year, okay? Again, different situations. One guy had absolute phenoms on the outside. One guy had virtually nothing. Mac somehow ended up with a better completion percentage. I'd probably trace that to some downfield throws. Bad throws, Tua had 61. Mac only had 57. Imagine that. Bad throw percentage, again, lower for Mac. On target percentage, Tua had 76. Mac had 75. And I talked about the differences in the play style. So far, Tua's had much better operations around him last year in particular. RPO plays, there were 71, and Tua threw for 615 off of that. Mac only ran 21 RPOs and threw for 121. Play action, this is disturbing. This shows you how bad the Patriots' offensive set was. Play action for Tua with Mike McDaniel, 159 of those. He threw for 1,400. Mac ran half as many play actions, 80 of them, 640 yards. So, Mac's numbers are surprisingly good, actually, in my opinion, given that he's spent 2 years in the league and ran a primitive offense and won. I'm going to give it to Mac on durability, accuracy, and pre-snap ability. I'm going to give it to Tua on arm strength, believe it or not. Mobility is a wash. And since I've never seen Tua melt down like I did see Mac melt down last year, I'm going to give Tua the leadership and composure edge. But I would take Mac over Tua, despite all the numbers rolling up. And I went on my friend Omar Kelly's podcast this week down in Florida, the All Dolphins podcast. And I said that. I honestly, and I know we're in a Dolphins podcast and people are going to bristle, I think Mac Jones is better than Tua. Now, I continue to have...
Oh, Milo, you've done it. Oh, Omar,
I know.
Omar, tell him the hell is in for. Come on.
All right. Go ahead. Let's hear this. Let's hear this.
If you put Mac Jones in Miami, I think you'd get the same results, maybe better.
Who was holding the clipboard for Tua back when they were at Alabama?
Oh, but he was old.
No. I'm talking about now. If you put Mac Jones in Miami.
Okay, well, Tua still developed as well.
Yeah, no, I get that. I totally get that. It's an opinion.
Okay.
I think Mac Jones is probably more accurate than Tua. I don't think he has the same arm strength. I think Tua has a stronger arm, believe it or not. I don't think Tua is accurate. I think that obviously Mac Jones is more. I don't think he's terribly accurate. Watch that Steelers game last year. He was a friggin' disaster.
No, that was a bad game. He played.
I've never seen anything like that from Jones. But Jones has a noodle arm, so that's a problem. But he's also a friggin' genius. And they're probably both about the same level of mobility. So potato between those two. Really, it's potato.
One was a top-rated quarterback in the NFL last year, but Yeah,
I know. One also had two of the best friggin' wide receivers in the NFL, arguably. And he actually had a coordinator, not somebody who's just pulled off the street from the sub shop and said, put down the sub. Why don't you call some plays? I mean, basically that's what happened. So South Florida is burning as we speak, thanks to that comment by me. Our next guest is Mike Sando from The Athletic. He's one of the most respected writers in the country. He's a good friend. I don't know of anybody, except for Mike Reese, who is more diligent in the way they do their job. He does a kick-ass quarterback tier every year. The results from these calls that he makes, and there's 50 of them, they reflect voting from these 50 NFL coaches and executives, 6 GMs last year, 8 head coaches, 10 evaluators, 12 coordinators, 6 coordinators. He's talking to people who know. So where were they in the tiers last year in 2022, entering that year? Mac was the 18th rated guy. Tua was 26th. Entering this year, well, they flipped a bit. Tua, of course, is 17th. Mac is down to 23. One executive, though, told Mike Sando, and this quote applies. You look at the skill groups, Mac has the worst supporting cast of any quarterback. How do you build up his confidence? You have a new coordinator. Great. I hope Billy O makes it easy for him, but you have a quarterback who can't create off platform, who doesn't have the run after catch guys that Tua has, and it's tough. Let's bring in Mike Sando right now because I treasure his opinion. Thank you for joining, Michael.
It's great to be here. This is a great discussion. I love this one.
It's fun.
It's really, though, what you have here are two players that most people in the league probably see as win with quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. They're not win because of. So that's sort of tier 3, maybe even upper tier 3. The tiers, basically tier 1, you can put on this guy's back, shoot. When Tom Brady's behind 28-3, the Falcons are scared to freaking death because he's going to throw it every play. And that actually puts the defense in a bind, right? That's tier 1. Tier 2 is kind of, that some of the time, but not as consistent. So I think of like a Matt Stafford, when he has it rolling, shoot, he's tier 1, but he just doesn't do that as consistently and doesn't always make good decisions. But I feel like anyone in the top 2 tiers, you feel really good that you can win a Super Bowl, right?
Yep.
For the most part. Tier 3 is a little bit more like, hey, if we don't have to have the 2000 Ravens defense, but we better be pretty good on defense. We probably want to take the ball out of our quarterback's hands a fair amount. We want to have a good run game. They may be able to operate efficiently and win us some games, but the other team's not going into our game going, holy smokes.
What are we going to do?
We got to have a plan. Okay. He's not the primary game plan consideration. And I think that's true for these two players. And so when you have guys in tier 3, I wrote a column today about Tua, but I think of somebody like Jared Goff, the people who've been in the absolute extreme situations, who are, not tier 1 quarterbacks. And maybe Goff's more talented. He was obviously Tua was picked high too, but they can look vastly different when in these extreme situations. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you can't tell the difference. And so I think what your exercise is a great one, for this, because they've been in such extreme different, not only that, they've been in extreme different New England based setups where you're kind of a defensive mindset. You know, the quarterback and the coach aren't really a partner, right? It's not a partnership,
right?
Where really a primary focus is how do we make this guy look good and make it easier for him? That's what Mike McDaniel is now doing.
Bill doesn't wake up in the morning and say, how am I going to make life easy for Mac today? How am I going to, I'm going to get to the facility. And the first thing I'm concerned about is checking in with my guy, Mac, and making sure that we're heading forward, because quarterback's the most important position. It's just not how the guy operates. Here's the interesting thing. Brady is a perfect example of Mac and Tua on extreme steroids, because you look at the 2019 Tom Brady, when people said, I think he's done. I don't blame Bill for moving along 12-4. They started 8-0, but they looked at it and said, no, that's because of the people around him. Now, if you put Tua there or Mac there that year, it would have been an absolute and abject disaster.
Yes.
But that's what Brady can do. Brady or Goff, so many of these guys, I think Brady's an extreme example. You take him from New England where people think he's done and he's 12-4 and they lose miserably to Tennessee. You put him in Tampa Bay, and in his first year there, introducing these people to his offense, they win a Super Bowl.
Well, I think I've always subscribed to this, the idea that there's a baseline level of weaponry that everybody needs. And so a good example of this would be Patrick Mahomes in the opening game. Okay. He's a 54% passer. He went under the baseline level needed even for Mahomes. No Kelsey, right? There were times with Brady where, depending on the combination of weapons that they had, there was a point there where, hey, if he played 2 months without Gronk, and you did the splits of his stats, oh my gosh, he looks bad. Yeah. And then there might have been another time when it was Edelman. You know, just depending on sort of the setup of what the offense was, you could remove a part and Brady would fall below the waterline and he'd be inhaling a little bit of water, right? You know, just that's sort of the visual.
So what's your assessment of these two guys? Who would you say is a better quarterback? And I know that's a loaded question.
Yeah, no, I don't think you can pick the guy who isn't having close to the same production. Now, unless you're going to bring into the whole picture of, hey, I don't think Tua can make it through a season, right? Who would I rather have to pay $30 million a year?
Yeah. That's a good question.
That's a good question, because I do believe Mac Jones can stay on the field more. I'm more worried about Tua for reasons that really are part of the evaluation of who's the better investment, or can we count on this guy? But in terms of who's better when they're both playing and healthy, it's really, you can make the case with all this contextual stuff that it might be Mac Jones, but it's hard to make it not be the guy who just threw for 466 yards. Now, that being said, I did, for this article I wrote in The Athletic today, I looked at all of the receivers that Tua threw to when Brian Flores was the coach, and now since McDaniel. Okay. Because there's the difference in yards per completion, Tom, goes from 9.9 to 14. Okay. It's unbelievable. And with this current regime, 67% of his yardage is going to two guys, Tyreek Hill and Waddle. And when you go back to when Flo was there and they didn't have a good offense, it's divided among 10 guys, right? There's no one even close to the same. In fact, I think Mike Gesicki was the number one yardage guy under Tua. In 22 games, he had 807 yards. Okay.
Yep.
Tyreek Hill had 266. He had a third of that, or whatever that is, 43% of that in one game the other day. That ain't all Tua.
No, it's not all Tua. Definitely not all Tua.
But it's also hard to just say, well, despite the fact this guy's lighting it up and the other guy isn't, that I want the guy who's not. You know, I mean, you got a good point. But
you had a great quote too in your tiers where it said, some of these guys are damned if they do, damned if they don't. You criticize them for not being able to produce on their own. Then they get guys around them and you dismiss their production when they get the guys. I got to ask you this. As you look at the landscape of the NFL and you see the finalists last year with Mahomes and the Eagles with their 2 brilliant receivers, and Joe Burrow with his 2 outstanding receivers, and the Dolphins on the rise with their 2 brilliant receivers. Is it impossible to look at New England, regardless of who the person in charge of personnel is and his resume, and say, what are they doing? Can they join the rest of the league?
I think you have to say that. I think look, they're 25-26 since Tom Brady left. Okay. So the cynical people in the league who are jealous of New England's success, admittedly, the cynical people in the league, when he had Tom Brady, would say, yeah, get rid of Brady. He's a 500 coach like the rest of us. Okay. All of those places that they won in the margins always, special teams, defense, efficiency, like those don't win the game. Those are right. Those don't win the game by themselves. Now, I think the special teams have probably fallen off. Right. So where's their edge?
Quality control.
Their edge
situationally. They don't understand how to play.
Yeah.
In these, hey, down 10, 8 minutes left without Brady, who would just come on his white horse and do Brady things.
Yeah. And so, I did a column a year ago, or maybe even the year before, where I just listed all the people that left that building and the years of experience and the people that are there. It's a big difference. So it would be disrespectful to Bill Belichick and all these accomplishments to say they're just another team. But if you take away all of that and just look at it on paper, how are they not that? And what is it about them that scares you? It's probably their defense. It's probably, Belichick's going to have a good defense, probably always. But how do you pick them to go deep in the playoffs?
And the time we spend saluting Bill's adaptability, there's a refusal to adapt. Again, I made the point at the top. They're using as their number one a Miami Dolphins cast-off. They're relying on a second-round pick, Tyquan Thornton, who looked like a fifth-round pick, to become an outside downfield threat, and he doesn't play. Literally doesn't play for them because he's continuously injured because he's so slight. Kendrick Bourne's a good player. They put him, it's the best wide receiver, and they put him so deep in the doghouse last year, he wanted out. Now he's back on board. Juju instead of Jacoby. Yeah. It's just every chance they get to make the right decision, they go the opposite.
Well, and so think of these sort of mid quarterbacks who aren't the tier oneers, right? So you'd think like Kirk Cousins. Well, he's got Justin Jefferson. I mean, it makes it, he can have really big games. Kirk can. He can have great games. Tua now, really amazing weapons. Just going through the list here of other guys. Jared Goff now has an offensive line guys. Again. Yeah, mid guys, right? So
Daniel Jones. If Daniel Jones has guys, he's good. If not, not good.
It just makes too much sense. I mean, how could we say that that's not the case, right? Who would ever say, I think I would not want to have dynamic weapons?
And I think that it would be a coach who says we can live without them because we value, and we are going to be, the strength of the wolf is in the pack, and we're going to out efficiency you, and we don't need DeAndre Hopkins for short money.
Well, then you have to draft him.
Right.
You have to draft the guy and have him on the cheap contract, and we could all list the receivers that they've drafted.
We don't have to go down that road. We're going to have another road to go down with Mike in just a moment. We're going to come back and talk a little bit more. Hey, get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can be on everything from spreads to player props and so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/NSBO and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. That's FanDuel.com/NSBO. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
21 plus and present in Massachusetts. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Hope is here. Gambling helpline ma.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. Play smart from the start. GameSenseMA.com or call 1-800-GAM-1234. NFL Sunday ticket offer ends 9/18/23. No refunds. Terms and embargoes apply. $100 off NFL Sunday ticket, not YouTube TV. YouTube TV base plan required to watch YouTube TV. Redemption requires a Google account and current form of payment. Commercial use excluded. Subscription renews. Cancel anytime.
All right, Sando, you get the eyes on the entire league. I want to get your opinion of how the AFC East changed after week one. We know there's a big story going on here, but in general, their performances.
Very disappointing for Buffalo to lose that game. I thought they would win the game, even with Rodgers playing, because I think we've overestimated their decline. Probably we just, they were 13-3 last year. Obviously, they missed the one game, but it felt like they were, 9-8, just with the narrative on their off season and because of the way it ended. So I've thought that they have probably, their window for winning it all is probably narrower than it's been. I think they missed it a little bit, that 13 seconds of infamy that they had. I think it's going to get harder for them, but I still think they're a very good team. So very disappointing to see Josh Allen play that way with his decision making. I felt it was a choice. I don't feel like you can just say that is that's troubling to me. That's just troubling to me. It makes me wonder what's happening coaching wise, what's happening with him. Because that was just a game, easy to win game, probably if he just protects the ball and makes a couple plays like he can do. Because in 2 minutes he went right down the field, right, with an OPI. They had a field goal try, or they were down there. So that's disappointing. I still feel like they'll be there in the end. I still feel like they'll be a good team, but I have questions about them. I mean, Miami to me is just really sustainability. I think their quarterback and their offense were not as good late in the year, and so we know what they can do. Are all those guys going to be clicking down the stretch? And I think you have to say probably not, right? Just based on what we've seen, Tua is going to get banged up, and it's going to be harder for them. So, but I still like them. I still would have to pick, probably Buffalo first, and then I think you probably lean towards Miami. I think the Jets are going to be sneaky still. I think the Jets last year were a 7-4 team. I like a little bit of the dynamics now for Zach Wilson. I think it's changed. I think he's a little bit more of a sympathetic figure. I think he was cocky and didn't know his place in the locker room and how to conduct himself. Okay. And that's hard on a defensive driven team for any quarterback. I mean, I mentioned the 2000 Ravens earlier. It was hard for even a Trent Dilfer, right? To when it's such a defensive team. And I feel like Zach Wilson now can kind of come in a little bit less expectation, less under the radar, and maybe they can rally around him. So I still probably put them, as the third team that could push for the second team if there's injuries to Miami. And I still would see New England as the fourth team.
I look at the Sunday performances, and I know what Tua did and Tyreek Hill did, and they were on the road against a good team in Miami. But I still look at the four teams' performances. And if you take out, and I don't know if you had a chance to watch the entire game because we're busy, they were down 16-0 after 12 minutes. For the next 48 minutes, the only touchdown that Philadelphia scored came off a 20-yard penalty-aided drive. Yeah. So soup to nuts, the Patriots were down 16-0. They outscored Philadelphia, I believe, 20-9. Yeah, 20-9 over the next however long, 48 minutes. The one touchdown they scored was on a short drive, penalty aided, and off of turnover. New England might have had the best performance, the best 48-minute performance in week one. If this was the NBA, they'd be kicking ass, Mike.
So me parachuting in right now to New England and listening to this, I'm just so struck because that's exactly how every other team's thought for the last 20 years. Hey, we were close. We lost. We lost, but we actually, the shrinking margin of defeat, there were some positive signs.
We have 7 moral victories. I've counted them. I counted them. The Seattle one was a moral victory in 2020 when they lost close to with Cam at quarterback. There were multiple moral victories last year, and this was another moral victory. This is moral victory number 8.
It was.
I'm big at dispensing them. I dispense them all the time.
They could be a scrappy team that wins some of their games.
From afar, are you interested at the arc of Bill Belichick's NFL dismount?
Oh, very much. Yeah. I love, I'm one of the Hall of Fame voters, and obviously he's going to go right into the Hall of Fame, but I like to wait for the analysis of everything. I do. I think this is a fascinating chapter. because of what came before. Now, he's the last guy to win more than 10 games in Cleveland, so it wasn't a complete disaster in Cleveland like everybody makes it sound like. He had some success there. He's a great coach. But I would love to see him coach for 5 years now and have the years before and the years after. And then, of course, you and I will be getting older by then, but it would be fun it would be fun to take it in then, wouldn't it? Because what if what was his winning percentage in Cleveland? I'm just going to guess 48%, or I don't know.
About that, yeah.
So what if it's 48% after? What if it's 48% after Brady, and there's enough time? Like, we're already into, what is this, 3 years?
He is 20, 21, 22. This is his fourth non-Brady season.
Year. So I think Belichick will coach a couple more years, don't you? I mean, I think he's going to go for the record.
I think the expiration date is the end of next year.
Yeah.
But I think if he's there, if he's got one win to go, everybody has a decision to make, him included.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that that's helpful information in assessing a career. One of the things that I don't think we can compare a lot of other coaches to Belichick, so I don't want to do that. But I would, because of all the championships, and even I don't care if you have Tom Brady or not, they did amazing things, and they were great in the construction of their team. They always had great defensive special teams. So he's going straight to Canton. There's nothing to talk about. But
and you look at the positioning of the books behind you, the guy over your left ear, Chuck Noll, I think is the most similar to Bill in the arc of what happened toward the end. Not Tom Landry, more Chuck Noll.
Yeah. But what I look at in the non-Belichick coaching, the coaches we really have to make a discussion about, right, to get in. I look at, did you win everywhere you went? Because I think if you can drive success everywhere you go with different quarterbacks, that tells you it's you in general.
Yeah.
So when I make the case for Mike Holmgren, who's a Seattle guy, and I represent the Seattle market, I'm like, geez, he showed up in Green Bay. They hadn't won anything in 10, 15 years. They're immediately competitive, and they're going to Super Bowls with a quarterback who was acquired, had never done anything, and he turns into a Hall of Famer and 3-time MVP. Shows up in Seattle. They haven't won in a decade. John Kitna goes to the playoffs, gets Matt Hasselbeck, who's a practice squad guy, and he goes to 3 Pro Bowls and a Super Bowl. Like, that's, to me, the development of the quarterback, the winning wherever you go component of it. Joe Gibbs, 3 different quarterbacks. I know it wasn't a bunch of different places. Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks. Try it sometime, right?
Yeah.
Those are the things that really put the cherry on the top for me with these coaches. And it's hard to do. There's even some guys who don't have the championship success, like a Marty Schottenheimer or a Chuck Knox, who I really admire because they went to 3, 4, 5 places and immediately turned them all around. Seattle. Hard to do.
It's funny because you can look at chicken or the egg conversation. The greatest defensive player of all time, if people want to make the contention it's Lawrence Taylor, they don't have a hard time doing that. Well, Bill Belichick was on hand. And then the greatest quarterback of all time, Tom Brady, he was on hand for that too. Coincidence? I think not. But Mike, you got to go. You have radio.
I got to go. I got to do a radio hit here. A couple minutes.
Couldn't appreciate you anymore. Mike Sando from The Athletic. Every time he comes on, we get smarter and smarter and smarter. Thank you.
Thank you so much.